In EVE Online, bridge trolls are real. For as long as the game's been around, players have set up violent blockades on stargates called gate camps. These traps are frustrating for new players to handle because they look like they're impossible to beat. But what if I told you that avoiding these gate camps was a simple matter of minding your manners? By the time you're done watching this video, you'll have a comprehensive understanding of 5 of the major types of gate camps and what makes them strong. You'll even learn some manners or strategies to counteract them. Furthermore, we'll analyze 3 of New Eden's most dangerous Lowsec hotspots to determine which threats are the most prominent in those areas. Finally, I'll give you some blanket advice on how to stay safe in Lowsec, even when you're not quite sure what to do. I hope you enjoy the lecture. Each solar system in EVE has a security status, but this number is misleading. One might think naturally that 0.1 security is safer than negative 0.1 security, but this is not necessarily the case. Lowsec, despite being safe from dangerous tactics like warp disruption bubbles, is, in my opinion, the most dangerous space in the entire game. More than wormholes, more than nullsec. But why? Well, the answer, it's really simple. Higher traffic. In nullsec, many regions are owned by an alliance, and traveling through that space is generally fairly safe with intelligence networks and the sheer number of allies one has available nearby. In wormholes, the lack of local seems scary, but it actually provides a layer of security not available in New Eden by allowing you to stay truly hidden. Combine that with the idea that there are very few players that actually live in Anoikis, and you have kind of a dead area. It's not that dangerous. However, in Lowsec, it's a bit like the Wild West. There are many more factions involved, countless innocents simply traveling around, in close proximity to trade markets. This is a recipe for action, but not all Lowsec is so conducive to camping. For example, in faction warfare areas, gate camps are largely non-existent because the local militia clears them out of necessity. But for the Lowsec systems closest to a trade hub like Jeddah, these are exceptionally dangerous areas. In the next chapter, I'm going to explain in ascending levels of threat the 5 main types of gate camps that I see in Lowsec. The idea is to have a baseline understanding of which threats exist before analyzing areas and strategies. Instalocking is the most common type of gate camp in Lowsec. The premise is simple. Configure a ship to have fast locking speed, so you can both lock and apply a warp disruption module on the target before it warps off. In theory, this is something many ships are capable of nearly naturally, such as interceptors. The standard for instalocking is 2 seconds, which means that if a ship can warp away in under 2 seconds, it's largely immune to instalocking. That's why tiny ships seem to flit around Lowsec without much trouble. The bridge trolls simply cannot snatch them out of the air. Smart bombing is probably the second most common type of gate camping tactic I see in Lowsec. The idea of smart bombing is a bit trickier than instalocking, but far from difficult. Although in EVE we tend to think of being in warp as a moment of peace, there are some things that can interact with us as we warp, smart bombs being one of them. If a clever capsuleer activates their smart bombs as you're landing on the gate, but before you actually land, they can snipe you out of midair and kill you mid-warp. This is smart bombing, and it's terrifying for ships with low hit points. Blopsing, or Black Opsing, uses a class of battleship that allows them to instantly jump to a beacon, even bringing friends along with them. Naturally, this is a very powerful mechanic and oftentimes is included with other gate camp setups in the background. All it takes is one ship with a covert cynosural field to show up as a slow ship is passing through to instantly herald a massive, powerful fleet capable of destroying any single target. Although this seems unfair, it's pretty balanced because of the risk of things going wrong for the Blops group. Plus, cynosural ships tend to not be the fastest of lockers, allowing you time to warp off. Clutter camps are where things start to get scary and broken. In Eve, after traveling through a Stargate, we know we get a 60-second invisibility timer. Doing anything breaks that timer. If we break the timer and immediately cloak, it's as if we never uncloaked. Nobody can target us. But if there's an object in space right next to us, we can't cloak. The result is that any ship that relies on a cloaking module to evade gate camps falls prey to the Clutter camp. Now, what is the Clutter camp? Well, it's simply an Instalocking camp with the addition of having a bunch of objects littered around the Stargate to prevent cloaking. Takes a while to set up, is kind of random, and can easily be shut down, making clutter camps highly dangerous, but largely impractical in most areas. Ultralocking is the final boss of gate camps. It breaks the rules we've laid out for ourselves. It is essentially the dad of Instalocking. Remember how I implied we needed to be able to warp off in under 2 seconds? Well, Ultralocking does not care. Outside of some corner cases with tactical destroyers, any ship that can't cloak can be caught by an Ultralocker as it goes through a Stargate. I'll go into detail later, but know that Ultralocking is highly fickle, requires playing from a specific location in real life, and is widely misunderstood. It's a threat, but it's a controlled one. Although there exist many dangerous Lowsec systems, I want to focus on 3 of the most dangerous: Ahbazon, Tama, and Rancer. These 3 locations were home to most of my errors as I learned the game, errors I never intend to make again. I'm going to go through each of these systems and explain tactics they use, why that system is special, and how I personally navigate around their threats. The first system I'd like to discuss is Tama. This is a Lowsec system located 4 jumps away from Jeddah and is used by local pirates, Calderi and Galente militias, and nullsec groups that live in the Northwest. It is one of the highest trafficked Lowsec systems and attracts extremely talented capsuleers and groups. Tama, specifically on the Norv Gate, employs just about every conceivable type of attack, but primarily focuses on Instalocking and Clutter camps. Because of the super capital forces in close proximity to this system, sometimes the local pirates even set up capital fleets on this gate, which, beyond being incredibly powerful and cool looking, have excellent decloaking skills with fighters. To navigate through Tama, you'll simply need an insta-warping ship. Although Ultralocking has been set up in Tama many times before, it's not a popular spot for it for some reasons. Ultimately, if you have a sub 2 second aligned ship and don't warp directly to your outgate to eat a smart bomb, the system won't give you much trouble. Remember, returning to Jeddah through Tama is a free ride if you avoid smart bombs by warping at range or from weird angles. It's just going from Jeddah through Tama that's a danger. The second system I'd like to discuss is Ahbazon. The fleets that set up gate camps in this system heavily employ Instalocking, smart bombs, and clutter camps. Although most of the firepower is focused on the Hakoda gate, the Shera gate is often camped as well. Warping between Hakoda and Shera all but guarantees somebody will smart bomb you, even if you're in a cruiser. Like Tama, this system is too heavily trafficked for Ultralockers to feel comfortable with their setups for very long. Thus, the major threat is Instalocking. However, because this system is so popular, you can guarantee that there's a Blops-capable ship on every single gate as well. With Ahbazon, because the threat is two-directional, it's important we utilize the third Stargate lore. This gate allows us to nearly freely enter Ahbazon from behind, avoiding Shera camps altogether. Using insta-warp ships when coming from Jeddah allows us near complete freedom in this system, but I personally like to stack my hit points just in case I make a bad warp and have to try to survive a smart bomb. The final system I'm interested in discussing is Rancer. This system is special for a number of reasons, but primarily because it connects Jeddah to the metropolis area, and the alternate route is very long. It's also special because it's a triple pipe system, meaning both gates in Rancer can be camped on both sides, allowing for flexibility, unlike in Tama and way more than Ahbazon. This system is much more quiet when it comes to consensual PvP than the other two, but still regularly gets lots of foot traffic. Because it's not as contested, this is the #1 location I've witnessed Ultralocking over the years. It's the safest place to set up, isn't as easily counter-blops as other locations, and still gets lots of valuable ships bumbling through. Because of these factors, this is the most dangerous system of the three. There is a near-permanent Instalocking camp here, often run by just a single person or two, but most groups that stay here long-term specialize in ultralocking. That means you simply cannot expect to fly normal ships through here without dying. But why? Now is a great time to explain ultralocking in simple terms. Ultralocking is accomplished by stacking lots of scan resolution, typically being donated by some other ships via remote transfer. When a pilot's scan resolution is high enough, and if their network latency, or ping, is low enough, they can just target sub 2-second ships. There's no mystery to it. It just works. However, to get low enough ping, it's not really feasible for most people. Generally, one must be located fairly close to the data center that EVE Online uses in England in order to have low enough ping to pull off ultralocking, but it is possible anywhere if the ping is low enough. There is some more nuance involved to ultralocking that you can read about through the link in this video's description, like how sometimes it's required to jump in and out of the system to reset things, a fact that lends itself to why ultralocking isn't utilized too much in Tama and Ahbazon with all of the distractions. It's too easy to get one's setup disturbed there, I believe, and ultralocking setups tend to be fairly elaborate and expensive. But for you and I, we only need to know that ultralocking exists. It's not uncommon in specific areas, and it's the major threat to Lowsec travel. You are not safe in a sub 2-second aligned ship in specific systems like Rancer, Miro Item, Grelier, Van, Vicamia, and others. While you can technically get ultralocked anywhere, the most eligible spots are those with enough traffic to be worth it, but not enough to get chased off constantly. This allows you to evaluate the area and determine the threat of an ultralocker before you even jump. Before we move on, I want to share a silly interaction with another capsuleer that I found humorous. While performing these ultralocking tests and collecting footage, I noticed one pirate was trying really hard to ultralock me, but failing most of the time. Now, I've already established at the start of the previous chapter that this capsuleer was capable of ultralocking, yet they seem to be struggling with consistency. Notice how each time the pilot clearly yellow boxes my ship, which indicates a lock was resolved, but not in time to apply disruption modules. This is what happens when an Instalocker tries to lock a sub 2-second ship, yet we've already established that they can ultralock. They should straight up be catching me. After several runs like this, the pirate directly messaged me and told me that they, quote, weren't trying to catch me, and asked if I wanted them to try. Naturally, I insisted I did indeed want to die, waited a bit longer, and then flew through the camp again. For a 5th time, I tried to go through the camp, and for a 5th time, I was yellow boxed. To me, this clearly indicates that the capsuleer was doing something wrong with their ultralocking. After some time passed, I sent off a mail to the pirate asking why they insisted they weren't trying to target me. I was met with a flurry of incoherent denial mails that I won't make you read because I actually like you. The takeaway for us is that despite this capsuleer living close enough to the data center, it's not enough to ultralock on its own. When one fails to catch a ship with an ultralocking setup, one needs to cycle through systems to reset the PID equivalent immediately. One fail is enough to know, but it's even better if you use your ults to ensure you're hot before any valuable targets fly through. Because this pilot doesn't seem to understand this, my tests apparently embarrassed them, and they felt the need to lie about how hard they were trying to catch me, despite me having clear evidence of the contrary. To make things worse, I then proceeded to fly my interceptor into this capsuleer's ultralocking camp and cloak up right in front of them. Naturally, they spent a ton of effort trying to decloak me before going on another rant in local. For good measure, I sent a shuttle through 4 more times. No catches, although I may have permanently damaged this capsuleer's ego by publishing this footage. I really just wanted to get some clips of ultralocking. I didn't intend to embarrass a pirate, but to be fair, we EVE players are not exactly known for our social skills, are we? Now that we've defined the threats, studied the hotspots, and even had a run-in with a local pirate, it's time to talk shop, or how I actually get around these gate camps in my everyday gameplay. In order to counter an Instalocking camp, simply pack a ship that has an align time of under 2 seconds. This is fairly common knowledge, and we can skip past this one. Now, to beat a smart bomb, there are 2 schools of thought: tanking your ship by increasing your hit points and resists, and circumnavigating the smart bombing ships themselves. The former is highly susceptible to stacked smart bombing ships. Did you know that even cruisers can get smart bombed down if enough praxis are stacked up? The latter option is much more reliable. Because there are no bubbles in normal low-sec areas outside of pirate militias, you can simply warp to an outgate at 70 or 100 kilometers to avoid smart bombs. But even better is warping to a nearby citadel or celestial and performing a D-scan and looking for ships that might smart bomb you. However, you should be aware of cloaked smart bombing ships like Proteuses and try to be unpredictable, because smart bombing requires prediction. Playing around Black Ops is pretty easy. Most things work, being insta-warp, micro-cloak tricking, and so on. Black Ops campers are really just looking for dumb, slow industrials and battleships to pick off. Anything cruiser and below should have a fighting chance to return to the gate in time before they land their army on top of you. However, don't underestimate these Blops gangs. That cloaky pilot in local is almost undoubtedly sitting in an Arazu, and he will catch you if you make a mistake. As for clutter camps, this is by far the hardest one to avoid in the entire game once they're set up. If it's in a random location and was created by just 1 or 2 players, it's impossible to get around without a scout. However, be assured that clutter camps are regularly cleared out by players in uncommon spots and at hotspot systems. Clutter camps are often part of most Instalock setups in hotspots, even if they don't set them up intentionally due to the number of shipwrecks that naturally accrue. Because most clutter camps don't also do ultralocking, it's enough to be insta-warp in most scenarios to beat clutter camps. Lastly, ultralocking. Countering this is, well, fairly simple. There are only a few locations where it's actually done, and anybody who can reliably pull it off and has the motivation almost certainly wants a prime spot and will be willing to fight for it. Thus, if you avoid specific areas, such as the Rancer pipe, you're almost never going to see it. With that said, there are a few pet systems where one single player sets up ultralocks, such as D Minoras over at Van. These systems change as people come and go, but they're typically set up at the most obvious camping spots on the outskirts of Empire space. Avoiding ultralockers is as simple as not face-checking the systems most likely to have them. You can also just cloak, bro. Eve is a terribly complicated game. Even though I exchanged some banter with a pirate, I genuinely appreciate these game mechanics. Gate camps truly do keep things spicy around here. I'd like to send you off with a piece of blanket advice. Consider modifying your mentality from one that hates these camps to one that appreciates them. Doing this one simple trick has completely revolutionized the way I treat these hostile players and their bag of tricks. They're fascinating to me, and I hope you can share my perspective moving forward. One day, it might save you your pod. Thank you so kindly to those who support me on Patreon. I love making these videos, and the more support I get over there, the more of these I can justify making. If you like my work, consider signing up over at patreon.com/chlorokin. You'll get credited in these video essays, unlock access to my Discord, and make a difference in my life. If you sign up for the free tier, you'll get updates on my production. Thanks. I'll see you on the next one.